Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Well, as Germany continues to militarize and shift toward war economy, I believe it is very important to understand just how the current policy of Chancellor Merz is affecting the population of Germany, its industries, and what to expect next. I think we need to put this into context, and that's precisely what I intend to do in this video, and I hope that you find it interesting and also informative. Germany was once the undisputed economic engine of Europe. For many decades, it actually represented industrial excellence, technological innovation, and fiscal discipline. Remember those days? Well, today that image is fading. It is completely dead, some would argue. Germany is now facing what many economists describe as its deepest economic crisis since the Second World War. After years of stagnation, Europe's largest economy has become trapped in a dangerous combination of weak growth and persistent inflation, which is a condition known as stagflation. According to Germany's Independent Council of Economic Experts, the economy is expected to grow by just 0.5% in 2026 and 0.8% in 2027. Meanwhile, inflation is projected to climb to around 3%. Those numbers may not sound catastrophic, but they do represent something far more troubling for Germany. The country has failed to recover the momentum that it enjoyed before the pandemic, and much of the global economy has actually moved on. For Germans, inflation, of course, carries particularly painful historical memory. The country experienced two devastating episodes of hyperinflation during the 20th century, which left a lasting political and psychological scar. Even moderate inflation effectively generates enormous public anxiety to these days. The result is in an economy that has stopped growing while the cost of living continues to rise. When Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who is now the most unpopular political leader in Europe, when he entered office, he promised to restore Germany's competitiveness because it is the backbone not only of the economy in Germany, but also the prosperity of its population. His government has actually introduced spending cuts, welfare reforms, and proposals to raise retirement age to address the enormous fiscal burden that is created by Germany's aging population. But many of Germany's problems cannot be solved through domestic policy alone, and that has become quite obvious. The refusal to consume relatively cheap Russian energy by Germany fundamentally changed the country's industrial model. For many years, Germany effectively manufactured its products and relied on affordable natural gas that was imported from Russia. That competitive advantage that it used to enjoy has actually disappeared almost overnight. At the same time, Germany shut down its nuclear power plants following decisions that were made years earlier under Chancellor Angela Merkel. Replacing the lost generating capacity has actually proven to be far more expensive and complicated than the German political elite has anticipated. Now, at the same time, ongoing instability in the Middle East has disrupted global shipping routes and increased transportation costs, which added further pressure on businesses and consumers across Germany. Germany's export-driven economy has therefore been squeezed from every single direction. Now, adding to those challenges is intensifying competition from China. And this is the elephant in the room. Chinese manufacturers are no longer simply producing low-cost consumer goods. They are now competing directly with Germany in electric vehicles, in industrial machinery, in renewable energy equipment, batteries, and advanced manufacturing technologies. And so the country's famous automotive industry, which has long been considered the backbone of German prosperity, is now under enormous pressure. And by the way, I just uploaded an entire video several days ago where I discussed that Germany is turning its automobile factories into drone factories as it transitions to war economy because it is preparing for a direct confrontation with Russia. If you're interested, I have multiple videos here on my channel where I go into greater detail, and there are also expert interviews such as the most recent one with the ex-CIA Larry Johnson, who discussed NATO's recent summit, and you're welcome to watch those videos next. Now, Volkswagen, Europe's largest automaker, has unveiled one of the most dramatic restructuring plans in recent history. Management is now considering closing several German factories while cutting as many as 100,000 jobs across the group. Plants in a variety of German cities actually have been mentioned as being at risk. The company says that these painful measures are absolutely necessary for the company to survive, which is a first in Volkswagen's history. Volkswagen faces slowing demand, of course, for electric vehicles. It is facing shrinking profit margins, rising labor costs, and fierce competition from Chinese automakers that are producing increasingly competitive vehicles at significantly lower prices. So effectively, Germany is no longer competitive. Volkswagen's announcement triggered protests across Germany. Workers demonstrated at 18 Volkswagen facilities, with union members accusing management of forcing employees to pay for years of strategic mistakes. At the company's headquarters in Wolfsburg, labor representatives warned executives that they could not simply, quote, pass the buck onto the workforce. This is, of course, not an ordinary labor dispute. Volkswagen directly employs over 650,000 people across its various brands, and Germany's automotive sector supports roughly 3 million jobs throughout the broader economy. So if Germany's car industry contracts significantly, the effects will spread across suppliers, engineering firms, logistics hubs, steel producers, chemical manufacturers, and thousands of small businesses. The consequences could reshape the entire German economy, and one could argue that this crisis has already begun. We're watching the very first days of this crisis unfold. But truth be told, automobiles are only part of the story, actually. Germany's traditional economic model depends heavily on family-owned industrial companies. These businesses remain highly successful in many specialized manufacturing sectors, but critics argue that they have been slower than their American and Asian competitors, and they have been slower in terms of investment in high-risk industries such as artificial intelligence, advanced software, semiconductor design, and commercial space technologies. Innovation increasingly depends not only on engineering talent, but also on venture capital, on risk-taking, and also regulatory flexibility, which arguably Germany has very little of. So in those areas, Germany has struggled to keep pace with its competitors. Even the country's growing military-industrial complex reveals some of these structural weaknesses, which really makes me question how Germany is planning to take on Russia with such a structural challenge. Germany plans to dramatically increase military spending over the coming years, which could potentially cause it to borrow hundreds of billions of euros to modernize the Bundeswehr. However, critics worry that much of the spending will flow toward large established corporations instead of smaller innovative firms that have transformed modern warfare through inexpensive drones, autonomous systems, and software-driven technologies. At the same time, German manufacturers continue relocating production to lower-cost European countries, reducing domestic employment despite rising government military spending, and also seeking lower energy costs. Economic uncertainty is also reshaping Germany's politics. Support for the Alternative for Germany, or AfD, has continued to rise, particularly in eastern Germany, where economic dissatisfaction remains much stronger. Many voters increasingly feel that decades of globalization have benefited large corporations while leaving ordinary workers behind? And can you really argue with them? As unemployment rises and factories face closures and layoffs, political polarization has intensified across Germany. Economic frustration is feeding broader debates over immigration, national identity, and Germany's future direction. This is a pattern that is seen repeatedly throughout history. When economic optimism disappears, political stability often becomes much more fragile. Germany, therefore, finds itself at a crossroads. Can it reinvent its economy once again through innovation, technological leadership, and industrial reform? Or is Europe entering a phase where its only option is war economy? That, of course, remains to be seen. Stay tuned. I will do my best to keep you updated here on YouTube, Substack, or Patreon. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you here tomorrow. Take care.